My name is Sloane Carter. I'm 36 years old, and last night, I walked into a room where I was never meant to be seen. They said I didn't belong, that I'd bring the mood down. So I dressed up anyway. Black dress, soft coat, heels that pinched, and showed up with nothing but a photo album and a smile they didn't deserve. I wasn't on the guest list, but I had signed every check, funded every like queue, and backed the very room they tried to keep me out of. I didn't come for revenge. I came to remember, to see if blood still recognized its own. They didn't expect me to rise. But when you've been erased long enough, even silence becomes a weapon. Before I show you what happened at the Meridian Sky Room, tell me where you're watching from. Drop a comment if you've ever been the one they forgot to invite. Because this one's for anyone who stopped waiting for a seat and built their own table instead. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stay. Because when truth walks in, even perfect rooms start to shake. Dad once told me, real strength doesn't yell. I never forgot that. Even when he forgot me. The morning light broke through the thin linen curtains of my apartment, dust particles dancing like hesitant ghosts. I had been awake for hours. The kettle clicked off with a soft pop, and I poured the hot water into my chipped mug, gifted from a student I once tutored in Englewood. It read, Miss Sloane, the one who shows up. I stared at it longer than necessary, fingers wrapped tightly around the ceramic. Showing up had never been the problem. It was being seen that had always been the issue. My phone vibrated once on the table. A notification. Meridian Sky Room. Catering confirmed for 65 guests. It wasn't addressed to me, of course. I wasn't on any official thread. The reminder came through from the assistant of a vendor I had quietly sponsored. A necessary formality. My name didn't need to be on the guest list. I knew every table layout, menu option, and lighting cue by heart. I had signed the checks. Still, the official invitation hadn't come until last night. And not from family. Maribel, the housemaid who'd worked for my parents since I was a teenager, had whispered over the phone, Your father. He didn't say it out loud, but I think he hoped you'd come. Hope. What a fragile, ridiculous thing. I set the mug down, eyes scanning the apartment walls, filled with photos. Not of me, not of family, but of kids in uniforms standing beside metal lockers and chalkboards. Every single one had a story. Every single one had beaten odds. Most were first-generation high school grads, some college-bound. Faces that reminded me why I walked away in the first place. Why I stayed away. Until now. I picked up the gift I had wrapped in plain brown paper and twine. Inside was a photo album. No gold foil, no fancy calligraphy. Just 30 pages of lives changed. Each page held an image and a handwritten letter. Dear Sloane, because of you, I believe I can... No titles, no foundation logo. Just names and hope stitched together. A quiet resistance. I dressed simply. Black dress, barely there makeup, hair pulled into a low chignon. My reflection stared back at me from the bathroom mirror, eyes calm but unreadable. Somewhere Vivian was probably arranging orchids for centerpieces. Lauren was likely tweeting about her new podcast deal. Brandon, if he remembered the event, would arrive just in time to make an entrance. None of them would expect me to walk through that door. Especially not with heels that pinched and a photo album that might as well have been a lit match. Let's see if blood really remembers, I murmured, pulling on a soft gray coat. The kind no one would look at twice. The sun had risen fully by the time I stepped out. Cars honked, dogs barked, and the city moved like it always did. Indifferent. But I wasn't indifferent. I wasn't here for applause. I wasn't here to confront or forgive. I wasn't even sure if I was here to be noticed. I just needed to see, to measure what remained of us. By the time I reached the elevator, my breath had steadied. I clutched the album tighter, like it might anchor me. The concierge at the entrance nodded. Big day today, Miss Carter? I smiled faintly. You could say that. And then, as I stepped out into the city, Heels pressing into the concrete with deliberate weight, I whispered, "Happy birthday, Dad." No one looked surprised when I walked in. They looked annoyed, like I was crashing something that was never mine. Lauren had once said, "Just because we're related doesn't mean you're invited." That echo never left me. The Meridian Sky Room glittered like a diamond perched atop glass and ego. The soft hum of live jazz drifted through the air, mingling with the faint clink of champagne flutes. From the elevator, I stepped into a world so carefully arranged it felt fragile. Like one wrong breath might crack it all. The lights were warm, golden, flattering. Vivian had made sure of that. I walked in slowly, letting the doors close behind me with a hush. My heels clicked too loudly on the marble floor. The scent of citrus and white flowers lingered in the air. Imported orchids, I guessed. There they were. Vivian stood near the center, wrapped in silver silk, laughing gently with a local journalist. Her hand moved to her hair with unconscious precision, photo ready from every angle. Beside her, Lauren shimmered in red, a drink balanced between fingers that never worked a day. Brandon scrolled on his phone, barely glancing up. I made my way over, gift cradled in my arms like something fragile. My heart wasn't racing. It was bracing. "Happy birthday," I said softly to Gregory. He didn't look at me. Vivian turned with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sloane, darling, you made it." I did. She gestured vaguely as if pointing out some distant relative. "Why don't you mingle? It's a lovely crowd tonight." A waiter approached her just then. I caught her lean in and murmur, "Limit the champagne to guests with the VIP bands, please." She didn't glance at me again. I looked around. Everyone remained seated. No one shifted to make room. Chairs were occupied, names on gold-plated place cards glittering like final judgments. I turned to Lauren. "Here," I said, offering the wrapped gift. She took it with 2 fingers, held it up like it might stain, and placed it beside an overflowing trash bin near the bar. "How thoughtful," she said, voice flat. A knot of laughter broke out behind me. Brandon, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, leaned in and muttered, "You shouldn't have come. It's not your kind of crowd." I smiled. The same practiced smile I used in grant meetings with disapproving donors. A cousin I barely remembered piped up from a nearby table. "So, how are your students?" She said it the way someone might ask about rescued dogs or mold. "They're brilliant," I replied, "unlike the champagne." That earned a smirk from the bartender. I found a quiet corner near a floor-to-ceiling window. Chicago sprawled below, chaotic, alive, uncurated. So different from the stale elegance behind me. Lauren's voice cut through the music, sharper than any violin. "Sloane," she called, drawing all eyes. "We didn't assign you a seat because this isn't a charity gala. This is family." The table burst into polite laughter, the kind that comes with well-practiced cruelty. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I smiled wider and gripped the strap of my bag hard enough to feel my pulse throb beneath my fingers. And then, a voice behind me, firm but respectful. "Excuse me, madam. Would you like to move to the executive lounge?" The moment froze. My mother dropped her champagne glass. My brother blinked like he misheard. I turned, unsure what to expect. Some kind of last-minute insult, another dismissal. But instead, the man who'd spoken wore a navy suit with a silver lapel pin and a name tag that shimmered under the lights. Julius Kane, General Manager. "I'm sorry for the confusion, Ms. Carter," he said, tilting his head slightly, respectful. "The staff didn't recognize you without the advance notice. Would you please follow me to the executive lounge?" A second passed, then another. My mother's hand hovered midair, trembling slightly as beads of champagne rolled across the marble. Lauren's jaw hung open like she'd forgotten how to speak. Brandon squinted, as if trying to match what he heard with what he saw. I gave the smallest nod. Julius led the way, his posture upright, precise. I followed. Heels clicking on the floor once again, only this time the sound made space. Guests parted. Whispers bloomed. A waiter near the bar murmured, "Isn't that the founder of Learning Roots?" Someone else hissed, "No, she's a major investor here. That's the Carter girl?" I walked past them like fog, untouchable, slow-moving, quiet. Vivian caught up, her smile stiff. "There's no need for—" she began, but Julius turned with a practiced apology. "I'm afraid the executive lounge is for stakeholders and VIPs only. Ms. Carter is both." Gregory stood, for the first time since I arrived. His voice wasn't angry, just stunned. "Why didn't you tell us?" I paused. "You weren't listening." It was strange how calm I felt, like slipping into water that matched your temperature. No shock, no sting. The executive lounge was quieter. Soundproofed from the noise outside, the city lights turned softer behind tinted glass. Julius opened the door and motioned me in. A security guard by the entrance raised his eyebrows slightly when he saw me. Recognition flickered. "Ma'am." He nodded, then looked back at Julius. "She's the one from the lease signing, right?" Julius smiled. "Yes, one of our key partners." Inside, the room was almost empty, save for a few discreet guests. Plush leather seating, low music, a tray of delicate hors d'oeuvres that no one had touched. I sat down by the window and took off my heels. My toes ached, but it was the good kind of pain. The kind you earn. Outside the glass wall, the party buzzed on, but the mood had shifted. Heads turned more frequently. Phones were lifted, fingers pointed, and lips moved in stories I didn't need to hear to understand. A different kind of presence. Brandon's face was lit by his phone. I could see the screen reflected in his eyes. A press photo of me from a charity gala last fall, standing beside the city comptroller. A caption read, "Sloane Carter, Learning Roots founder, quietly becomes major investor in West Loop revival project." Vivian stared, frozen. Her hand hovered above a napkin but didn't move. Gregory sat slowly, as if gravity had gotten heavier. I stood again, walked to the door. And as I closed the lounge door behind me, I heard my sister whisper, "What the hell just happened?" I didn't expect the executive lounge to feel warmer than my childhood home ever did. The hush inside was not empty. It was intentional, like the room knew secrets and protected them. Warm lights glowed from sconces set against paneled walnut walls, and white orchids bloomed in sleek glass vases like they'd been placed by someone who actually cared. A velvet chair was already pulled out for me, angled perfectly toward the view of the skyline. I sat down slowly, easing into its embrace. The contrast from the noise and cruelty outside was disarming. It wasn't just the silence, it was the respect baked into the space. The unspoken understanding that whoever sat here had earned it. Mr. Delacroix arrived moments later, his presence refined but unmistakable. "Ms. Carter," he said, offering a slight bow. "Please accept our sincerest apologies. There was a gap in communication with the event staff." I gave him a nod. "It's all right. I'm used to gaps." He hesitated, then smiled. "As you know, the Meridian Lounge and Learning Roots have a partnership built on integrity. The Learning Lounge Initiative, our study spaces across Chicago, wouldn't exist without your backing. 3% of our annual profit has already gone to those grants. It's become a point of pride here." I looked up, surprised. "You track that?" "We don't just track it. We believe in it." For a long second, I couldn't speak. It wasn't about validation. It was the recognition I never knew I needed until it was freely offered. Behind him, the elevator dinged softly. I didn't need to turn to know it was her. Jasmine Moore always entered like a heartbeat returning after a scare. Quiet but undeniable. She stepped in wearing a navy suit sharp enough to slice through tension. "Well," she said, strolling toward me, "if it isn't the most interesting person at the dullest family party in Chicago." I stood. She pulled me into a hug before I could resist. I hadn't realized how much I needed it. "You're late," I whispered. She grinned. "You're early." We sat, and she immediately opened the leather folder she carried. "So, first, your trust is finalized. The Board of Trustees met this morning. Your fund is officially active. The numbers are beautiful, if I may say so." She slid the document across the table. Second page down, one line read, "The Sloane Carter Honorary Scholarship. Launch date, May 2024. I stared at the name for a moment. Jasmine waited, letting the silence do its job. "This is happening tonight?" I asked. She nodded. "During dessert. Your name's in the program booklet, just not the one your mother edited." I gave a breathless laugh. "Of course." Jasmine reached into her bag again, retrieving a second folder. Thinner. I debated whether to bring this today. She opened it with a delicate flick of her nails, revealing a series of photos, emails, and speaking schedules. It took only one glance to know what I was looking at. "Vivian's been using your foundation name in her Rotary Club speeches. Claims she's mentoring at-risk youth through it. She's even hinted that she's on the advisory board." I stared at the printouts. She never even asked. She didn't think you'd notice, or that you'd ever be invited into rooms that mattered. I traced my fingers along the page edges. There were dates, recent ones. One from just 3 weeks ago. Jasmine leaned forward. Her voice dropped an octave. "So, do you want to go public, or do you want to let them crumble in silence?" They called for a photographer. I called for the PR director of Learning Roots. By the time I returned to the main hall, the mood had changed, but no one knew why. There was a low hum in the air, an undercurrent of unease that didn't belong to music or alcohol. The lights had dimmed. The stage, trimmed with pale gold velvet and flanked by white floral columns, now bore a massive LED screen. I recognized the production company's logo in the bottom corner. Vivian spared no expense when it came to appearances. Gregory sat center stage, flanked by Brandon and Lauren. Vivian stood nearby, testing her smile in a compact mirror one last time. She was dressed for sainthood. Pearls, soft pastels, hands folded like she'd just finished praying. "I'd like to say a few words before the tribute video," she announced into the microphone. Her voice was calm, honeyed. "Gregory Carter has always been more than a husband or a father. He's been a compass, a provider, a rock." A polite round of applause followed. I remained by the back wall, just left of the service bar. Jasmine stood beside me, arms crossed, watching everything unfold with lawyerly amusement. Vivian continued. "But behind every great man is a family who believes in him, a wife who stays, children who understand sacrifice." I smiled. So did Jasmine. The screen flickered. The music paused. Lights shifted to blue tones. And then the tribute began. Except it wasn't that tribute. A 12-year-old girl appeared on screen, seated in a modest classroom in Detroit. Her name, Danielle, flashed in the corner. "Because of Dr. Sloane Carter, I'll be the first in my family to go to college." Cut. A teenage boy in Harlem. "She taught us that someone out there still believes in kids like me." Cut. A mother in Phoenix. "We couldn't afford school supplies. Then Learning Roots showed up, with books, tutors, and someone who listened." The room fell silent. Then came the montage. Clips of Sloane, me, standing at podiums, laughing with children, planting trees outside a new school library. My name appeared in serif white across the screen. Dr. Sloane Carter, founder, Learning Roots Initiative. Vivian was frozen, her mouth open, her hand still clutching the mic like it could steady her world. Lauren whispered something to Brandon. He didn't respond. His phone was in his hand again, but this time the screen was facing up. I saw my photo trending. Again. Then came the final words of the video. She never asked for credit. She gave us futures instead. Applause erupted before Vivian could reach the remote. But she tried. Of course she did. She stepped forward, clicking furiously. The screen went black. Then another voice filled the room. "Excuse me," came a woman's voice, smooth, clear, professional. It was Naomi Chang, PR director of Learning Roots. She stood tall at the foot of the stage. This tribute was scheduled months ago, with consent from this venue. We are proud to honor Dr. Carter's legacy and her ongoing work. Vivian turned crimson. Naomi added, "Our team will be available outside for any press inquiries. The foundation just announced its 10th Learning Center this week." I didn't move. I didn't need to. The spotlight had already moved. No one was looking at Vivian anymore. They were looking at me. One by one, heads turned, phones pointed, eyes studied. I felt the heat of it, not as a burn, but like light after years in a basement. Vivian stepped on stage, her hands shaking. This wasn't the plan. I met her gaze, let the silence stretch, then smiled. That's why it worked. Gregory stood now, slowly. His face looked more tired than I'd ever seen it. He turned toward me, no longer blinking, no longer avoiding. His voice cracked. Why didn't I know any of this? They finally pulled out a chair for me. I left it empty. It stood in the center of the stage, spotlit, velvet cushioned, flanked by two trembling gold posts like some kind of misplaced throne. Vivian had placed it there herself after the PR team left and most of the guests dispersed, mumbling into their phones and avoiding eye contact. I didn't step forward. Behind me, the last notes of the jazz band died out like the tail end of a lie. The air was thick with something heavier than silence. Humiliation, maybe. Or the void that shows up when illusions collapse. "Sloane," Vivian said, forcing a smile that didn't know where to sit on her face. "Let's take a photo. One for the family album." I looked past her. She kept trying. "We can have dinner soon. Just us girls." "No, thank you." She blinked. "Is it because of the video?" I tilted my head. "It's because it's always too late with you." Lauren stood by the floral archway, quiet now. The card in her hand, the one that had read, "Thank you, Mom," in Sloane's forged handwriting, tore slowly, line by line, until it was nothing but ribboned shame between her fingers. Brandon gave me a strange look, like he was trying to solve a math problem with too many unknowns. "So," he muttered, "you're rich now?" I almost laughed. Almost. "I was never poor," I said, slipping on my coat. "You just couldn't see beyond your metrics." Outside, the wind caught the edge of the city. Jasmine opened the passenger door for me like she'd done it 100 times before, like she'd been waiting for this moment just as long. As I stepped in, my phone buzzed. One new message. Subject line: "Confirmed funding, $3 million grant approved. From Global Children's Future Trust." I handed the phone to Jasmine as she started the car. Her eyes scanned it once, then she let out a low whistle. "You know what this means?" I nodded. More cities, more rooms, more books. Back inside the hall, Gregory sat alone. The photo album lay open in his lap. His thumb ran over a picture of a boy holding a diploma, grinning, toothy, impossibly proud. On the screen behind him, the tribute video began to loop. Again. The girl from Detroit reappeared, blinking against sunlight outside her school. "You don't have to be born into power," my voice echoed through the room, "to build something powerful." The room didn't answer. It didn't need to. Jasmine turned the wheel onto Jackson Boulevard. The sky was wide and waiting. She glanced over. "So, what's next?" I smiled at the road ahead. "Build more seats, for people like us." I didn't stay for the end. When Jasmine's car pulled away from the curb, I didn't look back at the glass tower fading into the Chicago skyline. I thought I might feel something. Regret? Maybe nostalgia. But there was nothing left to grieve. My place in that family had expired long before I walked into the sky room. What they mourned now wasn't me, but the version of me they never truly knew, and never cared to understand. Jasmine reached over and squeezed my hand. Neither of us spoke. The night buzzed softly outside, full of street lamps and distant horns, and a freedom I hadn't realized I'd been aching for. I didn't need their apology, and I didn't need their chair. The chair had always been mine. I just stopped asking permission to sit at their table. In my tote bag, the edges of the photo album pressed against my hip. I'd nearly forgotten it was still there. Maybe I'd keep it. Maybe I wouldn't. Either way, I didn't need them to open it to know its worth. My phone buzzed. A text from the Foundation's PR team. Confirmed. The Henderson Trust approved the full $3 million donation. Congratulations, Dr. Carter. Dr. Carter. A name they used tonight because the world did. A title earned, not gifted by birth. Not signed off by a father seeking photo ops or a mother perfecting a narrative. I leaned back, letting the seat swallow me for a moment. My heels were off. My voice was hoarse, but my spine was straighter than ever. Jasmine turned on the radio, something soft and instrumental, and neither of us said it aloud. But we both knew what came next. Build more seats, not for validation, not out of spite, but because the world was full of people like me. People who'd been told, no seat, not invited, not our kind. And if one truth remained after tonight, it was this. Power built on exclusion crumbles the moment someone stands up without asking. Behind me, my family would wrestle with the wreckage of their own illusions. Gregory, watching the tribute clip on repeat. Vivian, spinning excuses that no longer held weight. Brandon and Lauren, silent in a house full of echoes that used to laugh at my name. I wouldn't be there to see it. I didn't need to be. In the end, she didn't take revenge. She reclaimed her narrative. Power wasn't in the spotlight or the stage, but in the quiet confidence to walk away when staying meant shrinking. Some betrayals don't scream. They whisper through the years, covered by smiles and empty chairs, until someone dares to sit anyway. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late. But once heard, it changes the room forever. And perhaps that's the lesson. When exclusion becomes tradition, breaking the silence is the most radical act of all. If you've ever walked into a room and felt like the space was built to exclude you, this story was for you. If your name has ever been left off the list, your seat quietly removed, or your voice tuned out beneath the noise of power and pretense, you are not alone. Sloane didn't show up to be applauded. She didn't return for revenge. She walked in because she could, because silence had gone on long enough. And when the world tries to erase you quietly, sometimes the most radical thing you can do is show up anyway. This wasn't just a family drama. It was a reclamation, a reminder that legacy isn't something handed to you. It's something you define, build, protect, even when the room forgets your name. So if you're building something in the shadows, if you're healing from the cuts they disguised as tradition, if you've been told to wait your turn, let this be your sign. You don't need permission to rise. Your voice matters. Your values matter. And the story they wrote without you isn't the only version that gets to live. Drop a comment below if this story resonated with you. Let us know where you're watching from, and whether you've ever had to choose between shrinking to fit in or standing tall, even if you had to do it alone. Share this video with someone who's rebuilding, who's rising quietly, who's rewriting the rules. And if this isn't your first time here, if you've been following our channel, listening, feeling, reflecting, thank you. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for walking this journey with us. Every view, every message, every moment you spend here, it matters. You matter. This channel isn't just about stories, it's about recognition, about holding space for the ones who were told they didn't belong, about turning whispers into words and words into power. So if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications, because we have more stories coming. Stories like Sloane's, like yours, like the ones still waiting to be heard. Until next time, keep showing up, keep standing tall, and never let anyone tell you that your silence is your place, because sometimes the quietest people leave the loudest legacy. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the end. And thank you for being here.